ChatGPT does is it allows you to take the space of like, a really wide angle of ways that the AI could go. Okay. And it's like, I don't even know where the hell we're going to go if we take that topmost path, and then compress it down into a much more likely subset of possible options that the AI could go, such that, if you were to be even slightly off here, the impact on your final destination, while, you wouldn't make it to your goal, you'd still make it pretty close. So I want you to treat your Claude.md as basically that initial trajectory that you launch all of your Claude sessions, whether in terminal or whether in the GUI tool like I'm showing up here. So with that understood, now that we're on the same page about how Claude.md is injected at the very front of any conversation, you start to realize that there's a tremendous amount of value in making that Claude.md as high quality as possible. Okay. So including a file, capital CLAUDE.md, in any workspace project directory means that this is now injected at the front of our conversation. And so you don't talk to this any differently than you would Claude itself. This is just a file that standardizes it and makes it really easy to build in like conventions for different workspaces. In such a file, you're going to want to be very concise, and you're also going to want to give it sort of the bounds of what this workspace is for. I could just as well actually copy this whole thing over, okay, and then paste this directly into my Claude code and then just get rid of my Claude.md entirely. But the value in having a Claude.md is I just don't have to do that every time. It's initialized at the very top of that conversation history like we just saw. And so what's in here, to be honest, is not super important. I actually had another version of Claude just develop this based off some Twitter posts that I saw that talked all about how to build websites with best practices. And you guys have access to all this stuff down below. I obviously have that template folder that you guys could use to get this and anything else. But suffice to say, this is how, or one of the ways rather, that you can currently design websites using Claude Code. So the three major ways that people are currently using Claude Code and other agents to do designs are as follows. The first is that you give it a pre-existing design, and then you give it the ability to screenshot itself over and over and over and over again. And basically what happens is the first variant that they create, that Claude Code creates, will be like an 80% match. Then it'll screenshot that, compare it directly to the source image, and then list all the differences, and then get 90% of the way there, and then it'll get 95% of the way there. And it usually can't get 100% of the way there, but it can get like 99% of the way. The value in this sort of approach is what we're doing is we're basically taking an inspiration website. And so in our case, we're going to be using it on this site here. And then we're using that to template out a bunch of like design fundamentals. So like the size of the text, the colors, the way the buttons look and stuff. And then what you do is you just change the content of the site with Claude so that it's like whatever site you want it to make. So in my case, I run this business called Left Click. This is my AI automation agency. We help people install growth systems into their businesses, typically B2B agencies. So what I would do is I would basically try and rebuild this site using this design. And, I could make some minor changes afterwards, but so long as I start with this nugget, Claude tends to do a really good job afterwards. The second way to build is you basically just give it a massive voice transcript dump. For those of you that didn't know, there are now ways for us to basically dump like a large amount of text using a voice transcript tool. I'll show you guys what that looks like now, but if I just hold this FN key, this little widget appears at the bottom of my screen. Now this is listening to everything that I say, and because I can speak a lot faster than I can type, I can actually say a fair amount in a pretty short period of time. Most people type at between 50 to maybe 70 words a minute, but we talk closer to 200 words a minute. That's a 2.5 to maybe 3x improvement. And because these models are so intelligent and smart and capable of extracting the meaning from the text, text is all they look at all day long. What you could do is you could just use a massive voice transcript dump to basically spell out everything that you want on the website. This isn't going to one-shot your website because we don't have a pre-existing design, but then you can just go back and forth with it. And then in a fraction of the time of developing a real website using a voice transcript tool, you can get pretty close. The third major way people are currently designing is they use components. Now, for anyone here unsure of what components are, basically, there are now services and tools out there like 21st.dev where designers have created specific components on websites. And there are features on these where you can actually click on it and then click on this button up here, copy prompt. Okay. And then it will take this entire web page, entire design, this little animation flickering thing, this jump on a call button, this sign up here button, whatever. And then it'll copy all the text needed to have Claude Code reproduce that for you. And so it's really straightforward and simple. You just make an account on one of these services. And then let's say you're building a website, you scroll through and you're like, wow, I really like this background paths component, right? With these cool sweeping things. I want that on my website. You would just copy the prompt, paste it into Claude Code and say, hey, install this thing somewhere up at the top. Because AI is great at language, you can get pretty close. So you can do all sorts of things with this. You could do like cool button borders as we see here. You could have like a sign-in component over here. You could have multiple cards. This stuff is okay. To be honest, I find it much easier just to go straight to number one, which is just giving it a design and a screenshot loop and just having it work off of something pre-existing. I don't want you guys to think of this as like you copying a design. As you'll see, the end result will be quite different from this, but it's just a good way for you to like get a rough idea of the end design. And also not have to worry about things like the sizes of fonts, the colors and so on and so forth. Okay, so we're basically going to use this as like our inspiration. And then once we have our inspiration in place, Claude's going to be able to design whatever we want, whether it's an app or a dashboard or whatnot, very, very quickly. The final thing that I have to talk about before we actually do the designing is the difference between building something and then deploying. So when you build something, you're typically building it locally. When you do a tool, an automation, like we're going to do later on in the course, or an app or a website, we're running this thing on our local computer. But if we want other people to be able to access it, then obviously we need to deploy it. We need to push it onto the internet. And there are a variety of different tools that allow you to do so. So today, I'm just going to show you how to build the stuff. And then over the course of the next few modules, as we get deeper and deeper into the course, I'll also talk a little bit about tools like Netlify, Vercel, Modal, and whatnot that allow you to push both your software, the tools that you make, and then even things like websites and full-fledged apps to the cloud so that other people can access it on a domain like, nixawesometool.com. Okay, so without further ado, how would I actually go about this design process? Well, as mentioned, I have this Claude.md file set up here, and this is just something that I had Claude basically scrape through Twitter to find me the best practices of all of the different types of website designs out there that people are currently using Claude and other tools to create. And then I just had it like write me a little script, basically a little summary. And this is very squarely this give it a design screenshot loop. It's just written in like a very particular way. You do not need to know how the tools work. You don't need to know how anything works. You basically just need to know how to like find a resource out there or use AI to find a resource and then use it to make your own Claude.md. With that in mind, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to go on the website that I want. I'm going to screenshot it. However, if you guys aren't familiar, if I just screenshot like one section of the site, like this, for instance, on Mac, then I feed it in, I don't actually have most of the site, right? I only have that hero header. Okay, in terms of how to actually build this puppy, use Command-Shift-I or right-click on the page and then type inspect. This will open up a window that looks something like this. Once you're done, change the dimensions to full page width. On desktop, that's usually 1920 by 1080. This is termed the widescreen aspect ratio. Then just hold Command-Shift-P. I think it's Control-Shift-P on Windows. You'll open up this little command bar. With this command bar in place, you can then just type in screenshot and then go capture full-size screenshot. It'll actually scroll through the whole site and take an entire screenshot for you. If I click on this button now, as you guys could see, we now have a screenshot of the entire website top to bottom. It's kind of a hack. Not a lot of people realize that you can do this, but you can. It's pretty neat. And once we have this, we just have to do one more thing. It's pretty big right now. If you were to send Claude Code, like 20 megabytes or something like that, a file, number one, it would like really massively eat up your token limits. And then two, I think the API might have like a limit on this. So we just have to make this file significantly smaller. So I'm just going to open up this resize PNG file here. Page called resize PNG from iloveimage.com. You can use whatever the heck you want. And I'm just going to drag and drop this in, 50% smaller, even like 75% smaller, and then click resize images. This is now going to basically remap this for us. We can click download. What we're looking for is we're looking to get a file that's less than about, I want to say, I think like 4 or 5 megabytes or so. So it's not perfect. Okay. It's a little bit blurry, but it's all right. Maybe I'm just going to go back and resize this one more time so that it's, maybe a little bit bigger. Let's do 50% smaller instead of 75%. Okay, once we're done, we can click download resized images. This one is about 4 megabytes or so. If we open it up, you can see that it's still high quality, but it's much, much smaller than the other file, which is like 3 or 4 times. And now that we're done, we just add this into Claude Code. So back to our Claude Code instance, I'm going to go down here to bypass permissions. Then I just need to go find the file. So I'm going to click this top right-hand corner. And I'm just going to see if I can drag this in directly. Okay, so it's going to open this up. That's okay. Just zoom in, copy, and then you can actually paste this in directly. Okay, so just click that copy button, paste it, and now you actually have the whole file as context. Okay, and then we just have to do one more thing. We're just going to head back to the website. I'm I'm going to find actual, and then scroll down to this little body tag, and then right click and press copy styles. This is going to copy the styles of the site, including the button colors and sort of like the little gradients in the background and so on and so forth. You can paste that in. Okay. And then I'm just going to press enter. Now that we've uploaded these, keep in mind that despite the fact that this might mean nothing to you or I, keep in mind that there's that extra prompt that's been injected up at the top that literally says when the user provides a reference image, screenshot, and optionally some CSS classes or style notes, you should generate a website. So that's what it's doing immediately. It's analyzing the reference image and building this website recreation. Let me start by creating the actual HTML file. So this will now walk through its own little to-do list, take screenshots of its created website, compare it with round one, basically do the same thing over and over and over and over again until it gets to where we want it to go. And this is really what I'd consider to be the core building philosophy for Claude Code. What you do is you basically give it a high-level task, which in our case we did with the Claude.md. Okay. Then we allow it to do the task. And then we allow it to verify or basically judge its results. I think the reason why a lot of people end up sucking at Claude Code, or maybe they end up giving it instructions and then not being satisfied with its results, is they'll just give it the task and then it'll do the task. And then their loop is kind of like this, right? Task, do the task, give it another task, do the task, so on and so on and so forth. If you don't give Claude Code the ability to verify its own results, either visually through a screenshot tool, or if you're building some sort of software through like automated testing mechanisms and so on and so forth, test-driven development, then you lose like the vast majority of the value of AI. The reality is AI is not going to be perfect the very first time, but the value of AI is not in its ability to one-shot everything 100%. The value of AI is its speed, because you can have it get to 80%. Let's say this is like a, I don't know, a little quality bar or something. What you can do is you can immediately, it's not just going to be like, if this is time step 1, 2, 3, it's not just immediately going to be at 100%, right? That's not what it does. It's not going to go from here to here in like 2 seconds, then be done. What it is going to do though, is it's very quickly going to start here, then it'll go here, then it'll go here, then it'll go here. And then eventually after 2 or 3 or 4 time steps, it'll hit that 100%. And, we think that this is a really long period of time. Okay. But in reality, this is like 5 minutes. And if you contrast this with how long it would take a human to do that same, approach, humans will probably get closer to 100% quality on their very first go, but it's not going to be like a minute or two. What this is going to be is it's going to be like, 5 hours. We actually, believe it or not, tend to be a lot more precise in these machines that we've built. We can one-shot things to a much greater degree than they can, but their ability to test and then retest and work really, really quickly, orders of magnitude times faster than we do, is the real value. And that's something that I don't think enough people talk about. So just make sure there's always a task, do the task, and then verify the results loop somewhere in here, and you'll be fine. Now, heading back to our Claude Code instance, you can see it's now actually completed the first round of its HTML. Now it's screenshotted it as well. And then it's basically comparing the screenshot to the work that it's generated. And with this, it's going to make minor changes. So as you see, the very first thing it's done is it's replicated the get paid the same day by setting a payment link or the most flexible invoice on the planet with the buttons and so on and so forth. Okay. It's also replicated that top section, and it's used little placeholders here with these 160 times 100 little buttons, even with like the right tilts and whatnot, because it doesn't have access to the images. It then is, entering these little divs right. It's even got this cool little post-it note, which is really cool. And then it even has the reviews. And so as sort of like rebuilding the design of this website, it's doing a really good job, and we're only a couple minutes in. What's cool too is if you check out the thinking tab, you can see that it's gone through iteratively every section of the site. Okay, and it's listing what it needs to do next. So better decorative elements in Hero, better floating band, fixing the blue dot positioning, improving the invoice cards with map thumbnails. I don't know what half of this stuff means, but to be honest, for me, it's not super important. But just because I want it to be a little bit special and then show you the parallel capacity of Claude Code, what I've done here is I've actually opened up another anti-gravity instance. And what I'm going to show you guys how to do is actually design multiple of these simultaneously. Once we built this test, this do, test, and then verify loop over and over and over again, which we already have in our Claude.md, it's actually really easy to spin up multiple prompts and just have like 10 versions of Claude working on things simultaneously. So just for shits and giggles, why don't we head back over to our little website designer. It's then giving me a file here called Twingate. Okay, and then I'm pasting it all in. And now my computer's really humming. Like, you guys probably can't hear this because I like to noise cancel most things.